Welcome to the Artist Exchange Radio Show here live only on BeExposedRadio.com. I'm here, host Nate. That's kind of weird because I just realized we got on the same shirt. That's kind of weird. We didn't plan this. It's just
Oh,
how it's
okay.
just how it's happening in the world today. But I am here. I have my guest co-host here with me today, myself and Curtis will be doing a series of conversations around. I don't want to just say men's stories, but our topic today, his story, um, and it anything attached to some of the struggles it we have as black men, both man-made and self-made and natural occurrences. But I just wanted to get a lot of things that's been going on in my mind, and I met this gentleman, and I am really interested in like picking his brain and him picking mine, and just seeing what what falls out on the table and how we can help each other kind of talk through some things and just get through some of the things of life that we are finding ourselves in. I wanted to briefly talk about, well, today I got to watch the entire Louis Farrakhan speech, and it, it it was so poignant to me because it took a man of his age to be
Mm-hmm.
so honest, and you saw a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the things that he'd been preaching against. He's
Mm-hmm.
now speaking about it in a level of comfort that he, at one time, where he was trying to keep his seat as a leader, or
Mm-hmm.
felt like he was trying had to keep his seat as a leader, he's now speaking in a way that probably threw a lot of those people who were watching it that are
Mm-hmm.
starch supporters of his, um,
Mm-hmm.
probably threw a lot of them off. I know it threw me off. The first time I ever heard him say God, or it threw me off because I just didn't know that people of the Islam faith even use that word. So
Mm-hmm.
it just threw me off, and that was years ago. So this right here, it was
Mm-hmm.
3 hours, over 3 hours. It threw me off, and not simultaneously, but right after that, I
Mm-hmm.
watched the 12-minute Red Table Talk of Will and Jada, and I'll talk more about Louis Farrakhan at a later time. But the Will and Jada, what I got from it, all the negativity that they're getting, I think it is a reflection of what many of us desire. We desired um, something most of us did not get. Most of us don't know what unconditional love is. Uh, most of us don't know what transparency is. Most of
Mm-hmm.
us don't know what this is my business and you have nothing to do with it. And I think a lot of the disdain that we have, or people have, because I don't personally have that towards them, that have that towards that couple, that relationship that none of us know personally,
Mm-hmm.
is really the negativity is really the things that we are lacking, the things we wish
Mm-hmm.
our parents were, the things we wish we now are. Many of us are at the age of being able to be parents now from a different
Mm-hmm.
perspective, and we
Mm-hmm.
all wish we had those things. And the one thing that
Mm-hmm.
she said in that 12-minute conversation was, you cannot find happiness outside of yourself. No matter how hard you look, no matter how much you search for it, you cannot find happiness outside of yourself. And I
Mm-hmm.
guess what I got from their conversations and the things I've heard from her, this has been her journey in life. And
Mm-hmm.
connecting Jada, and Will was born in Philly, so Philly's a little bit like Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
That is a disorder here. We're
Mm-hmm.
always in search of who we really are, and we
Mm-hmm.
never take a look in the mirror to realize, well, it's that person right there. We
Mm-hmm.
add on things and decorate, but who you are is who you are. It's right in front of you, and we try to find that type of happiness and that type of fulfillment always outside of ourselves, never
Mm-hmm.
looking at ourselves.
Right.
But uh, and do you have any thoughts on that before we kind of go into
I
what?
I do. I think that's one of the biggest contributors to mental illness, undiagnosed,
Mm-hmm.
is desire. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, desire can take many forms. I'm not just speaking,
Mm-hmm.
desire
Mm-hmm.
of material things, but desire of, like you said, some people who may have grown up in a home without a father may desire a father. From that
Mm-hmm.
desire, if that desire is something where it becomes a void that you need filled, it leads to other things. So when particularly dissatisfaction, unrealistic
Mm.
expectations, those types of, you know what I'm saying? And they can go
Yeah.
on and just snowballs. So those of us who are less fortunate as far as experiences, wealth, and it may, even with that statement being true, that people um are misdirecting their energy toward this couple because of their success or what people think they have that they
Mm-hmm.
don't have, in
Yep.
spite of how they got it. People don't know the sacrifices it took to get that. Who's to say that their world was always heaven? Who's to say you're built to even handle that? So that's why desire is so dangerous, because you can live your life in a permanent state of dissatisfaction when you're coveting. you
Yeah.
know that's what that principle is. You're coveting something. And anybody who knows how school for the arts is, if you don't if your life is not about that school, you don't have a social life.
So when
Your
you're in the
social
arts
life
in
is your
general,
classmates, the
yep.
arts in general. So the thing is, it's a reason why she was connected to a Tupac, because their life was about their craft. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying? And people who are artists, I have to say it, we do live a different type of life than most people who are trapped, so to
Yeah.
speak, in the mind matrix will understand. If you're not putting, we're people who haven't had our imagination killed, you
Yeah.
know, and most people have had their imaginations killed. And
Yeah.
only thing that they do know is I see Real Housewives, I want what they have, or what I
Yeah.
think they have. I see Love and Hip Hop, I want what they have or what I think they have.
Look at how people are living right now who have gotten who their worth has actually been somewhat fulfilled in this small little moment with the
Mm,
unemployment checks or look at how people are living. Like their first
mm,
instinct is to get fresh or to live beyond or live out a
mm.
certain desire or lifestyle.
Mhm. Mhm. That's I was in a dialogue on Facebook with one of my music partners. Shout out to Ali Rosso.
Hmm.
Um and he was saying something about a conversation came up about narcissism. But I'm going to tie that
Hmm.
into this. I was saying that here we go. I said the reason Beyonce is as wealthy as she is because a lot of women live vicariously through her. She possesses what they think that she has over men, which is the power of seduction, the power of the strong ability to get men to submit to her.
Hmm.
She represents that. And all women have that side of them
That
where they
desire.
want to, escape the patriarchy or whatever, all of these things, and I'm not making light of it, but it's very
It's
true.
not.
It's
Yeah.
it's what it is. And
Yeah.
she's a woman who understands that. But look what background she comes from. She understood, she had a father in her life,
Hmm.
just like Venus and Serena had a father
Right.
in their life
Now
that
that doesn't escape you from the pitfalls that we make, but
right,
there's always a idea of getting back up and how to get back up
right.
when you have that balance
Your
in your
work
life.
ethic, your work ethic and your willpower has to push you through
Hmm.
these
Right.
types of things, especially if you're going to stay in art. So
Hmm.
Will and Jada are not your normal. Trust me, even watching the interview, a lot of people, they're going to get even more hate because they can't even understand what you and I just explained
Hmm.
right there. They don't understand. People in the world of art are always going to be the most famous, the most wealthiest people on the planet, as far as what we would call individual wealth outside of corporate, you know,
Right.
you know.
It's just,
So
it's just interesting. I watched it, but I often like to look at the comment when stuff like this is happening because nobody can believe that somebody from a place like a Baltimore or a Philly could obtain that level of unconditional love.
mm,
Everybody was waiting for Jada to say, "Well, we're getting divorced now."
mm-hmm,
Everybody was waiting for Will to make a face or combat anything that she was saying or be
mm-hmm,
angry, call out her name, her
mm-hmm,
blame him. And we didn't
mm-hmm,
see any of that. And they may have done that behind the scenes, got that stuff out before they
mm-hmm,
came on and were able to clearly speak on it. But none
right.
of us, most of us, even the ones that had a mom and dad in the house,
Mm-hmm,
that level of unconditional love that wasn't attached to how much someone was making or what someone could do for you or how
mm-hmm,
far from where you came somebody can take you from. None of
mm-hmm,
us beyond that, we've never seen that level of unconditional love before. Most of the people I know, if not
right,
all the
right.
people I know.
Because we're living in a different type of reality. You
Right.
know, money does change. It causes problems, but it can most certainly change situations. Amen.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right.
You
Right.
know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like it can definitely put you, as Dave Chappelle, you know what I'm saying? Now,
Mm-hmm.
just I've lived on a farm before. I know how peaceful
Mm-hmm.
it is to walk outside. You're not, to not have all of these city lights and different things distracting you from what the sky looks like.
But
So
you had to, at some point or in some way, desire that level of peace. Many people
absolutely,
don't. Many
absolutely.
people don't.
And I think it's hard to attain that if you're not a person who lives in the world of art, because what I call the beast world, that constant routine that is established for you to play a role in society while
Mm.
having to suppress your creativity.
Yep.
I
Yep.
think it is the most psychically damaging thing to humanity. I
Mm.
honestly, I feel sorry for people who don't have that, who can't sit down at a piano or get on a stage, and they don't, you know what I'm saying? I'm not against shrooms, but my God, if you can't escape into something else, geez, you might as well
Right.
go for it.
But and that's something that and actually brought about this level of conversation that you and I have started. And it's my desire to be as close to my most authentic self as I possibly
mm,
can be without
mm,
fear of ridicule or judgment or shame.
mm,
And as we that just jumped out my head. So
mm,
as we move on to this conversation, shame is actually that connecting part that will get us there.
mm-hmm,
Um, I think maybe a year or two into me doing this show, I had a young lady on my program from California. She was actually in California. She had called in as a guest,
mm-hmm,
and she had a organization called Say Something.
mm-hmm,
It was in support of anybody that had been molested or raped or sexually abused, um, to open your mouth and say something, because living with that type of trauma
mm-hmm,
cripple you
mm-hmm,
mentally, physically, emotionally, romantically. It will cripple your being. And many of us try to live through it and try to
mm-hmm,
deal with it. But what we fail to realize, all of our decisions are based on that moment in our time. Some
mm-hmm,
of us stay stuck in that moment. Some of us
mm-hmm,
pull out of that moment, but still have the remnants and the debris of that trauma.
mm-hmm,
It then turns into almost a shame. As Black
mm-hmm,
men, or I'll speak about mine and I'll let Curtis share his perspective. Shame crippled me. So that story, that young lady been on the show. First time I ever had spoken it out loud. First time I ever shared any piece of it. I was more comfortable talking about the trauma from having a great grandmother die in my arms than I was about some man touching me, another man peer pressuring me into having sex. And those are two separate instances and situations. This conversation today is about the shame attached to sexual abuse. And in my situation, because of my age, in both situations, I felt a sense of shame because in my mind, if somebody found out, they would automatically say it was something that I wanted to happen based on what they perceived my sexual orientation to be. Not because I was a child, and both of these adults were wrong, or they were out of line, or they did an illegal act, but because, like they say, women, if you did not have that mini skirt on, it wouldn't have happened to you. Fast forward to me being 30 years old, sitting on a couch, letting someone shrink my mind. I let a black female, conscious woman tell me that I had a mark on me, a scar on, or something of a scar that alerted these individuals that I was open, comfortable with this behavior. Those weren't her exact words.
Wow.
Those were the words that I had. She did say I was marked, as if these men could see something on me physically that said, oh, okay, that's a green light. My 30s after that, up until maybe 2 years ago, I was so angry at so many different types of people. I began to treat people how I felt in that moment back then as a teenager, and then again on that couch. It had nothing to do with me feeling victimized. It had everything to do with me feeling so much shame, being so embarrassed by this happening to me. I never once felt like I made it happen or I willed it to happen. Everything around me said that that's why it happened. And then for it to happen the second time, in terms of me now being pressured to have sex with a woman, another teenage woman. Me and her were teenagers. Our supervisor was a grown man. And me feeling pressured to have sex with her at an age where I wasn't comfortable having sex at that point. Me feeling it happening to me all over again in a different circumstance, in a different situation. So that was kind of my perspective in this happening, and me watching other people kind of go through the same thing, and watching all these court cases now pop up in the Me Too moment, and all these different individuals. We'll get on the specific stories that we wanted to talk about after this, but I wanted us to kind of share our personal perspective, however you feel comfortable, whatever you feel comfortable with, on these issues, either it being personal or just an observation. So I'm gonna let Curtis now take the floor and kind of express himself.
Okay. Shame. There's a power that comes in people being able to project shame on a person.
Right.
It's a very nasty, dark type of what I would call sorcery, you know. Shame, unfortunately, people who have been through many of these traumatic situations, regardless of age, gender, whatever, they don't feel comfortable coming forward because of shame. So what happens is people who need to be outed are allowed to continue their predatory behavior.
Yep.
Um, that's a very, very dark. Hold on, you gotta excuse me 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very, very dark energy to have over someone. Give me 1 second.
Mm-hmm. It definitely shame as it pertains to how we communicate. The shame, I'll say the shame that we often felt based on what our trauma was is
Mm-hmm.
one big animal on its own. But then
Mm-hmm.
we attach what other people have to say or whatever people think. That
Right,
shame then magnifies itself a million billion percent as I for real.
right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it what it leads to is the victim often finding themselves living in a mental prison,
Mm-hmm.
even a physical prison, because
Right.
the body isn't going to go beyond where the mind is capable of taking it.
Mm.
So it finds, the soul of that person that's carrying that shame, that weight of shame, is
Mm-hmm.
often unbearable, and can take them into places that are very uh, unhealthy. They're very it could lead to various illnesses in the body, of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's not a beautiful situation at all. And I personally have relatives, loved ones, friends who have been victims of some very sick people. Um, and many of them to this day are opioid addicts, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, they turn to other things. Some of them went through phases of promiscuity and
Yeah.
trying, as they would say, looking for love in all the wrong places. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I grieve for them. I grieve for them. Shame is a part of the reason that many people are bullied into partaking of things that they otherwise wouldn't.
Right. Right.
Uh, the fear of ridicule, the fear of judgment,
Mm-hmm.
um, the fear of exile, even. Those things are very real. And in our community, I've heard far too many stories of predators being protected, should I say. Uh,
Wow. Mm.
I've heard many stories of it, um, from places that I wouldn't believe, and many times it being a woman involved. This is very significant because right now, one of the biggest things going on in the news dealing with this Jeffrey Epstein situation,
Right.
which was, as we know, was a child trafficking ring.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, a woman, as we see, was a focal piece in drawing in many of the victims.
Mm.
You see what I'm saying? Um, and it's not to bash women. What I'm saying is we can't, I don't want people to just think that this is a problem of male aggression.
Mm.
You can you don't have to look far in the news to find a story of 20 something year old, 30, 40-year-old female teacher letting high school students, okay, I don't need to say, so it happens. And one of the things that happens even in those situations is that a young man, if he were to come forward and speak about being assaulted, especially in a heterosexual circumstance. You just all kinds of bitch ass nigga.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I wasn't. Am I allowed to speak like
No,
that?
go ahead. Go ahead. Go
Oh,
ahead. Go
okay,
ahead.
yeah. I mean, you're guaranteed to probably get your ass whipped. Like,
Hmm.
yo, why you fucking that up for everybody? Like,
Yeah.
because some people are socialized into being okay with being abused. They can't even recognize.
And I know this may be a stretch, but we see that now. And I brought up Jada only to bring up August in terms of look how men are treating him because
Mm-hmm.
he's expressing a relationship that did not work out where he was made to be a secret and that wasn't
Mm,
comfortable to him and he brought it to the but
mm,
look at all the he broke the side nigga treaty
mm,
and it's just we it's hard like at moments I wish I could just cry it out and went back
mm,
in those years where it was really affecting me. It's not
mm,
in my nature to cry. So in many of those moments, I wish because it just felt like that would have been a release that was necessary, but it just would not happen. And it was attached to you don't talk about it. If something like that happens, and it's been said. It's been said. And I want to kind of move us into that space of some of the stories, but a lot of the videos that myself and Curtis have been watching that I shared with Curtis, and Curtis
oh yeah.
probably found some of his own. A lot of the conversation that I heard was, "Man, if a dude played with my booty, I ain't saying nothing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If
Mm-hmm.
if my teacher wanted to have sex with me, man, but I look like telling him."
Mm-hmm.
Just that idea, but not realizing
Mm-hmm.
because you were introduced in that way. Look at your
Mm-hmm.
behavior thereafter. It has not been
Mm-hmm.
healthy. It is not
Mm-hmm.
healthy to have sex with 50 and 60 women trying to
Mm-hmm.
scratch an itch that ain't there.
Mm-hmm.
But he wasn't a side nigga, Jada was, or we're separated. No, it was the perception. It had nothing to do with what he actually was. Thanks for that comment. But it was more so the perception of it.
Mm-hmm.
You feel most comfortable in a situation where they're getting what they can get. A nut is sufficient, and all
Mm-hmm.
that other stuff, and I don't feel it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just weird, especially when we talk about specifically what we're aiming at today is when you've been touched as a black male,
Mm-hmm.
age at any background, with that shame attached to that makes you go out
Mm-hmm.
and then how do you live your life based
Mm-hmm.
on that shame that you have?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
bringing in some of those video clips. We specifically were watching video clips around Ron Savage, the
Mm-hmm.
gentleman who accused African Bambaataa of molesting him, and many have come out and not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily in support of him, but to say yes, this he African Bambaataa does these things. None of
Mm-hmm.
them ever really defended him, but
Mm-hmm.
just defended the fact that what he said was true, but not him. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and how did you, in watching those various clips, what did you take from his story?
Um, one of the things I took from his story, because I didn't just check out his story, I also checked out Hassan Campbell,
Uh huh.
uh, who is well recognized as a thorough official street dude,
Uh huh.
you know, who talked about first of all how people reacted to them coming forward with this information. And before we came on here, before we went live, I was watching a clip about KRS-One defending Africa Bambaataa, and in that clip, he was saying that certain leaders have to be untouchable, and I had to say, oh, what
Mm-hmm.
kind of hold up? I had to make sure I heard
Yeah.
that
And this
correct
is
again.
KRS-One, someone we
This is
have
right,
also put on a pedestal.
right. And that's why it's time to kick all of these pedestals down. And it's time for the self-actualized individual to actually come forth. And all of us, we, you know, because we as individuals know ourselves. So we need to stop thinking that these idols that we set up necessarily have our best interests at heart, just because they drop some science on us from time to time. Thank you. I'll take that. But this what you talking about here is some bullshit, sir.
But
Because
it's beyond that. He
yeah,
in
he
so many words, he said, yeah, this happened, or this could have happened, or we heard this happen. But see, we can't dismantle the image of hip. He was so focused on the longevity or the legacy of a music form,
right,
and masking that with we can't lose this black instrument
right.
because somebody says he's touched a couple of people.
Mm. And you know why? Because his economics are inextricably tied to the success of and Bambata's brand.
But
So
say that, say
yeah,
that.
he should say that, or he should have said nothing.
Nothing.
Because I'd rather you say nothing than act like the shit is okay.
But I'm now more comfortable with
That's
people
crazy.
saying these things because now I see you.
Mm-hmm.
How
Mm-hmm.
how many young men have you touched? Or how many times
Mm-hmm.
have you been touched?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and
That's deep.
it goes
You know,
into.
he had a son who committed suicide. I don't know what the story is around that, but I mean, if he was around a bunch of that, who knows?
Well, we hear these things from
Who
young women
knows?
all the time where there are several sisters or several women in
Mm-hmm.
a family line that's been touched
Mm-hmm.
by this same person, and that person is
Mm-hmm.
still around, and nobody is bringing any light to the situation. I can admit, I have a cousin in my family who has touched several women in our family,
Mm-hmm.
still invited to family reunion. And I'm not saying excommunicate, but something needs to be done, whether it's a sit down. And it's one of the things that made me so hard hearted towards men because nobody did anything. I have an aunt that turns into a little girl every time she sees him.
Mm-hmm.
Watch her, and her life has not been any type of great story.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of her becoming a mother, I think that's probably the most profound thing that has happened to her. But even in that happening, and I don't mean to put her out there, I'm not going to say her name, but even how she mothered her children, she was willing to die, do time, kill in protection of her children because she never felt that level of protection. And we're telling our young black men, deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you know, you was gay anyway, so you might as well just
Mm-hmm.
you know, it happens. He saw your mark.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if you had hidden your mark a little bit better, they wouldn't have found you out.
The shame and blame,
Yeah,
you
and
know.
and I'm noticing black men commit suicide. Black men have very unhealthy lives. Black men are so disconnected from a reality at times.
Mm-hmm.
And both of us have experienced that. We know others who have experienced that, but we are told to just chill out. And every
Mm-hmm.
single time there's a male issue on the table, and and it sounds hearted to me. It sounds so hard-hearted.
Mm-hmm.
We we intercept that. I'm sorry, with a
Mm-hmm.
woman's issue.
Right.
I want these men to die for what they did to Breonna Taylor, but I want
Mm-hmm.
them to die for what they did to all these black people that we've witnessed on film and off camera
Mm-hmm.
die at the hands of a
Mm-hmm.
police officer.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But we have these
Absolutely.
hashtags where, oh yeah, well, y'all out there killing each other. Y'all ain't shit anyway, so
Mm-hmm.
Well, you raising us to not be shit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Mm-hmm.
just, I'm even once we came up with shame for today's conversation,
Mm-hmm.
so much anger. I felt so much anger start to kind of like not even come out of me, but just be reimagined.
Mm-hmm.
Anger that I felt because I'm watching other young black men be told, "Oh man, don't why are you talking about that shit?
Right.
Why are you
Right.
why are you
Right.
bringing that up?"
Right. Right. Um, man, one of the conversations you and I had recently, leading up to this show, when we were brainstorming,
Mm-hmm.
was about success and psychologically and physically abused and sexually abused stars.
Yeah,
Particularly, how does that tie? Would they have been as driven necessarily had they not experienced certain things in their lives and so on? And a couple of the names we brought up, just to put a few names out there, of very recent high level situations.
mm-hmm.
Aaron Hernandez, former New England Patriots
Okay,
athlete,
yeah,
um, and R. Kelly.
R. Kelly.
No. Okay.
Mm.
These young, when you look into their backgrounds, they had a lot of trauma,
Yeah,
but they are high performing, highly successful individuals who were at the top of their game with all of this stuff they've been carrying.
yeah, yeah.
You know, we're sure that Michael Jackson, we could go down the list uh, of people who, but in particular, those are two very recent cases that have made headlines and had documentaries and short films done on them and all kinds of stuff. Almost as if people are, and they're not even really coming up with a cure for this. They're using it almost like as a psyop in one instance to
Mm,
desensitize people to it. This is just how I feel. And then in another instance, it's a lot of twisted things, undertones that's
right.
happening.
But the cure for
You know?
this, the cure, the idea of there being a cure for this
Mm,
will never really be, and I don't want to say never. It is hard for people to address because then I have to say, you know what? I knew such them, and I didn't do anything about it,
mm,
or I touched him, and
mm,
and then that starts another because we brought up the fact, what was Bambaata's story? What
mm,
happened to him to get him to this point? Was it just repressed homosexuality that just
mm,
manifested itself into I'm gonna touch anybody that
mm,
I deem less powerful? Because
mm.
African Bambaataa was a celebrity. People just
Right.
hear about him now. We so detached from his mark on or his support of the origins of hip hop, but
Mm-hmm.
he was a celebrity.
Mm-hmm.
And just like R. Kelly, he was shielded, and this man is still living today, still
Mm-hmm.
being shielded. And because it
Mm-hmm.
was a little boy, nobody is going to do anything to him.
Mm.
Nobody has done.
Right.
I thought there was no statute of limitation for sexual abuse on uh, child predators. I'm learning that in New
Right.
York there was one. So because he's resided in New York, that's what has saved him.
That's deep. That's
And
deep.
we're not realizing that because many of us are detached from. I didn't grow up with African Bambaataa being somebody that was a part of my, hip hop knowledge. That wasn't something I was taught until I was
Mm-hmm.
older.
Mm-hmm.
He was shielded. But
Right.
again, I have to say, what's his story? When he
Mm,
start killing off all these people that's doing this, and
right.
not to say that
That's
that's
deep.
any reason for him to do it, but
Right. We need to dig into the background because often we only attack the symptom, right?
yes, yes,
We're never getting to the root.
right,
We're never chopping the tree down at the root. So the root of this is I can't say for him, but the root of this, I'll say one of the strongest driving forces outside of the desire for food and water. Next is the orgasm. Okay.
mm,
Um, it's like eating to live, especially if you haven't had a lot of damaging experiences in it. It's the dopamine rush of the orgasm is a very
and even
powerful
if you have, it's still powerful.
yeah, yeah. It's something that has that is severely underestimated. And
Yeah,
people who have not gained this is going to tie into some of the philosophies that I actually research. Just like in the Kabbalah, they teach that you have an animal soul and you have a higher soul. I briefly spoke on this before. So
hmm,
that orgasm is tied to physical reality. It's tied to the body and the body consciousness.
right,
Okay,
right,
it's just like food and water. Literally, it's that strong. Outside, if you really think about it, the animal you. If you reduce man to an animal, what else are you? Eat, sleep, shit, piss, sex
hmm,
for procreation. But
right,
because man has that higher self, he can choose to indulge in that beyond just procreation. It can become a pleasure principle, you
yeah,
know, um, and a force that actually interacts with the soul of a person. So, meaning their mind, their will, their emotions, those intangible things that we know are very real. We can't see them. You can't see the mind, the emotions, but you know it's real if you have one. You feel it every day.
yeah,
Um, and those are a part of the things that steer your carriage, so to speak. Your mind, your will, and emotions when your body soul has been affected. So your intangible you and your tangible you are constantly interacting. They're inseparable,
right, right,
you know. And so people who haven't worked on that animal soul oftentimes, or when their animal soul has been opened up too early without understanding,
mm,
have a recipe for possible disaster or even the infliction and perpetuation of cycles. you know that's that that's where that's a part of where these things, that's the answer, kabbalistically, where I would go with it, is dealing with the animal soul and people having to really understand, like, dude, you have an animal you that's
yeah,
totally sensory perception and has its own consciousness. Like you and I in the pre-show, like we always have good conversations leading up to the show.
hmm,
So we were talking about how men have erections throughout the day without thinking about sex.
hmm,
So how it's possible for a man to be physically raped and produce a child. You see what I'm saying? A man could be asleep with a heart on. So if you're a strong drinker, um, it doesn't it doesn't exclude your penis from getting hard,
hmm,
because that
hmm,
can happen in your sleep. We have wet dreams in sleep, and all kinds of things. So for people to say that you can't be blacked out and taken advantage of, and this and that and the other, and all kinds of things, it's not true. It'll feel just like a wet dream. You wouldn't know the difference because you don't. Well, I can only speak for males, and well, for me. in a wet dream, I don't know the difference between what's real and what's not until I come out of it. I don't know.
But see, those things, I'm in a, even while we're talking right now, so many thoughts are coming to my mind because we still don't, all of these things are known to be true. All of these things are known facts. But at the end of the day, if someone violates you in that manner, the onus is still on you to deal with it. Not even to tell your truth, not even to speak up, but clearly to just deal with it.
Right.
And we spoke a little bit about that happening to adult men or men in general being forced into sexual situations. And the first thing that comes up is, man, how you, if your thing get hard, like, you wanted it.
Right.
But we know on the other side of it, women have known to have orgasms during a rape situation.
Yes.
So sexuality, well, not sexuality, the act of sex or the feelings or emotions or all those physical scientific things that go on with the body during sex does not cut off because my mind is in a frantic state.
Absolutely.
You know, a woman can't, because a woman is being penetrated, it's really, the orgasm may possibly happen. Just like in a situation with a man that may be induced or out of a drug state, it's possible to still apply friction or touch to that male part and it still get hard. If it's working properly, it can still get to that point. And what happens? What happens when that happens? You know, is he supposed to just not say anything or continue to go on? What effects does that have on him if he does not say anything? And in this whole conversation, there's not a denial or dismissal towards what's happening to women, but I am personally saying to you, men are affected by these things as well. And not only affected, but most times women are afraid of what could come from it. Whether she loses a job or she loses relationships or friendships or whatever, but men have just as much to lose.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because now I have a reputation that's separate from this illegal act that has just happened to me. I can't even address that because when I go to the police department, they're going to laugh. When I go to the lawyer's office, they're going to laugh secretly. When I go to family and friends, they're going to laugh. So I can't even express myself. It's not even that whether people believe me, because the belief is there. But that gets attached to now what my perceived sexual orientation is. Not that this person just violated me. We brought up Terry Crews. And because of his reaction to what happened to him, oh, he all type of coon now. Anything that he says now, is he a coon? Oh, that dude a coon. I just don't. I just want to know how we, going a little bit back to the clips that we were watching, and I don't want to make this about Ron Savage because I had the opportunity to have a brief conversation with him and just discover some things and learn some things that aren't being really said right now. But just the idea of how you heard other Black men speaking about this Black man and the other Black men that you learned about that were also a part of the same kind of sexual acts from African Bambaataa. But how did you compute what these men or these interviews that you heard? What did you feel about the interview process in general?
I felt some of the people who were asking questions were not. I felt like at times they were trying to clown.
Yeah. They will
Trying
often
to
start the
clown.
interview that way.
Yeah, like they were trying to clown as if this shouldn't be taken as seriously as a Bill Cosby accusation,
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
you know,
R. Kelly or
R. Kelly or anything else. It's like, oh man, you're supposed to eat that and swallow that, and it's so ridiculous to even think that. In some cases, people, like, oh yeah, well, why would you go back if you were this? But when you hear these young men talk about it's it's situations like, all right, there's psychological terms, right,
mm-hmm.
for when people have been kidnapped or been through certain traumatic experiences, and eventually you can break them or have them in such a state where they begin to empathize or whatever with their abuser. So they don't even, go forward and leave when they're set free. You know what I'm saying? They'll
Right.
go out of a situation and come right back into it. So uh I don't like that that's constantly brought up as a way to discredit. Sometimes a homeless person will tolerate a lot of things that if they value having shelter at a certain level for a night or so,
Mm-hmm.
they'll tolerate a lot of things that some of us who are have been fortunate enough to not be in those situations probably wouldn't tolerate. So a person who probably hasn't been through these situations, to them it's like ridiculous. Like, well, you went back a second time, you must have liked it, or this is, man, I wouldn't have went back there a second. Yeah, how'd you find yourself back there a second time? You went back again after, you know.
Or the same thing that they say to women when the person who they married to is raping them. How could you stay
Mm,
in something like that?
mm-hmm,
And I ask people who have never been in those types of situations, just don't have the interview. I know you
mm-hmm,
need the likes and you're trying to get
mm-hmm,
your YouTube page popping,
mm-hmm,
but you are doing more damage. I watched. It felt like to me he was in an orgy,
mm,
getting done all over again. And some of those
mm,
interviews where it was like three and four different people sitting down, rotating in the chairs,
mm-hmm,
rotating the mics.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Felt like he was and I don't
mm-hmm,
and I'm only speaking based
mm-hmm,
on what I actually physically spoke to him about,
mm-hmm.
because it was at the very beginning of when he first came out, and I asked him, how are you going to handle the interviews that you get? Because this person in my mind was back to being 14 and 15 mentally.
Mm,
And we watched all these interviews that has just happened over the
mhm,
last couple of years
mhm, mhm,
happen, and it felt like he was in an orgy. And I
mm,
know that's kind of graphic to kind of put it in that space, but that's what it sounded like to me.
mhm, mhm.
They will
They were
all start
passing
off
them
with like, well,
around.
I believe you, but what I'm saying is, you know, it looks like, people saying that,
Mm,
maybe you was already kind of sweet. And I'm like, how
mm.
the hell do you say something like this to somebody who is outwardly showing you the signs of trauma?
You know, one of the interviews that I watched was the guy Hassan Campbell. He was saying that
Hmm.
and he has, I believe, 3 or 4 children. He
Right.
was saying that it's been situations where he was with his woman, and
Like the
thought of
thoughts will
that
pop.
man and what happened to him goes through his mind, and he go, and then his it's a mood killer for him, and his woman trying to understand, what's
Hmm.
going on, you know what I'm saying. Then he was like, it's not so easy to just tell people that you've been violated that way, especially being a male. He was like, so, and he was saying like he definitely, he was saying, as far as he's
you can't say somebody was willing that almost into like you can't control what this grown ass man is. You know what I'm saying?
People really feel like, and I shudder to even say it only because it was said to me directly from a clinical therapist. People feel like these people have a mark, that they asked for this, that this was a part of their maturity into homosexuality. Had to ask for this. And then on the flip side of it, if it was a woman doing this to him, man, that's how you get it. That's how you learn what you learn. That's how you learn. How you will learn your stroke game if you don't get an older woman to teach you a little bit. We just went through this with little Boosie.
Okay.
Telling us how he got prostitutes for his sons and his nephews when they reached a certain age. And we have normalized this behavior in Black men. And I had an interesting conversation with a young lady, Tracy Jiggets, after our initial interview. And I brought that up to her that many men are walking out here. Big, loving families not feeling protected.
That's
just
deep.
Not feeling protected.
Yeah.
I can't come to my family. I can't go to my friends. And who can I go to sell these things to kind of release without being first? I got to deal with my sexuality before they'll even talk to me about what happened to me.
And that's just a horrible. Like, why would the question in the interview ever be, would you consider yourself to be a homosexual male? What the fuck does that have to do with what happened?
Out of all the interviews I've ever seen with Ron Savage, there was only one woman that ever intercepted any of those interviews. And out of all those interviews, she was the only one that ever asked him, has he gotten any help? And that was one of the last interviews that I saw. But I'm quite sure he's had interviews since then. He's conducted interviews. He does a lot of work within this field now. So I don't know currently where he is. I haven't spoken to him. And I think it's been almost 2 years since I spoke to him personally. But even with that being said, all of those interviews I've watched, all of those conscious thinking people, nobody has ever asked him, to my knowledge, from what I've seen, has he gotten any help? It took that one Black woman who also experienced that type of trauma to ask him. And she kept saying, I don't care what's going on. All that stuff is irrelevant. Are you good? And it's, she had her own agenda, but I'm sitting down, and some of these men that were interviewing him were 40, 50, 60-year-old men.
Yeah.
Know better.
Right.
Never once asked this man, what type of help are you getting? A lot of them they just wanted to angle the story on African Bambaataa.
Right, because they were clout chasing. They were using someone else's pain to get numbers and views.
Yeah.
And that's disgusting.
And to me, this conversation seems so outdated. And I'm only looking back at how long I've had to deal with it. But it feels so outdated, but this stuff is still happening. It's still happening. And it's so unbalanced because I don't want to, a lot of women are now coming out there tired of being blamed for everything. But every time, most women, there's an association or organization or a group or a place for them to go, a safe space. There's a safe space for this type of behavior when it happens to someone, to prevent
Mhm.
subsequent events, to help them kind of dumb themselves down or clear their body from any harmful acts that they've consistently done to kind of numb the pain, to
Mhm.
kind of wrap around services. Often men only get that when they're in prison
Mm.
or when they're so
Uh-huh.
far gone in any given life circumstance that
Mhm.
help is the only answer.
Mhm.
And in even most of those cases, I've done it, I've seen it happen. We still push those people away.
Right.
We still push them
And
away.
a part of that, the reason we push them away is because of the perceived threat of male strength to overpower,
Yeah,
penetrate, all of these terms. And that's what, to me, often, you know, that's probably why people think a man can't be raped, stuff like that,
why is
man.
that?
Because the perceived idea of male strength, when there
Mm,
are varying degrees of male strength, like just because, like, I at a given point in my life, I had to make I'm gonna share this. I had to make a conscious decision in my mid to late 20s to decide to gain quality instruction and combat skills. Okay.
okay.
Um, and I knew upon entering the gym that, okay, it's some people out here that walk around every day that if you aren't equipped to deal with them on a certain level, um, with quality skill, you're gonna have some serious problems. So
Mhm.
people look at males getting bullied, males getting certain things. Like the spectrum of male size, you can have males that's 5'4", 5'5", then some that are 6'7", 280 pounds. Like, it's not just a blanket male strength calculator,
Right, right.
uh, be it physical or mental. There's a spectrum. There's a spectrum. So being that I always use my hands for art, I had to will myself into years of training. One, to even be okay hurting a person physically, because that was not my natural. I was always athletic, but my instinct was never kill, kill, kill. Like, oh, I'm in a situation. If I felt like you had enough, I'll let you get up and walk away. I've never been the kind of person that stomp a dude's head out.
Mhm.
See, that's something. You have some people who are psychopaths, sociopaths.
Yeah,
You have a spectrum of people out here, and same comes with people in sexuality. You have spectrums. And the mental makeup of people is different. So there's no blanket male strength, mentally or physically. Part
yeah.
of it is nature. Part of it is nurture. You know, as psychology would say, you got nature and nurture. I had to nurture my 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 temper and my technique to be okay hurting someone, and
How
so,
does that? But in terms of this, your environment, how much a part of that was based on your environment?
well, I was raised in a two-parent household, Christian household, in church 3 days a week, choir rehearsal on Saturday, and church Sunday. So, I had a very sheltered life growing up.
Mhm.
And by the time I was in my early teens, I already had a direction for my life on where I was going to go with things, which is going to tie into my own experience of sexual assault that I can speak on as a teenager, not by males, but by females when I was in high school. So I went to, being raised the way I was raised, there was certain things that were instilled in my mind. One, I had four sisters, no brothers. So I had a father who taught me, treat women how you want your sisters to be treated. And my ideas of the character of women were the women who I grew up in church around, as far as what I knew then as a child, the women of the church. So when I went to, you grow up in the hood, but I'm rarely around. And when I am around, I'm practicing music. That's my environment. I'm in my art. I'm in my, the church. I'm in this and that and the other. I get to Douglas High School. And then it's like, oh, I'm around young women, young women who are menstruate, they're feeling themselves. They, as breast, as butt, even though we would call them girls, they're young women. Okay, let's not get it twisted. If they can get pregnant at 15, 16, 7, they're young women. Okay, and some of them have dealt with trauma that allowed them to have a certain level of sexual heightened awareness that I, as a young 15-year-old male, didn't quite have yet. I was raised, you're gonna be a virgin until you're married. That's the ideal. I was a hardcore fundamentalist Christian young man, and so when I go to Douglas High School in the 90s, I was there when we still had the high rises downtown, the projects that were like towers. Yeah, all of that. And there were students that were from the projects all over some of the worst neighborhoods. It was a lot of hood gangs, whatever, groups there. And my second year there, I was in a practice room. We had these practice rooms where there were pianos in every room, and we call them studios or whatever. And it would be like 3 rooms and then like a hallway that would lead to a main room. And it was many of these on a certain wing of the school. So my homeroom teacher, at this time, tapes and CDs were still around. So he had actually, shout out to my homeroom teacher if he ever watches the show. His name was Troy Burton. He was the person yes, Troy Burton was my homeroom teacher. Yeah, and he would let me listen to music in his classroom and so on and so forth after hours. This was after school, so he had an awesome CD collection. I would listen to CDs and put some songs that I liked on cassette tape so I could go home and practice to them. So one particular day, I'm just sitting there by myself, and this young lady, I remember her name, I never say it. She was actually a grade under me. So I was like in the 10th grade at this time. I'm sitting in there, I'm listening to the music, and out of nowhere, just someone sucking on my ears. I turn around, and this young lady, and she's, developed and this and that and the other, but I'm just a young virgin Christian boy, Bible in the book bag. My environment didn't prepare me for that experience, right. Actually being bullied and pressured right there on the spot into a sexual encounter. So I'm thinking like, I was totally shocked because coming from the background that I come from, I never thought a woman would even do something like that. You know what I'm saying? I'm not even thinking about something like that ever happening to me. At this point, I'm already, 6 feet tall and, developing young man. So after the first time that happened, maybe like 2 weeks later, I was thinking, all right, I'm going back down here, because I'm trying to, get this knowledge, get the music, burning some music. She catches me again in the same place that people be like, well, why would you go there again? Like, what kind of dumbass think I didn't think it was going to happen again. Often that's what some of the young men would say happens. I'm sorry, it'll never happen again. All right, cool. Well, it happens again. And what happened out of that situation, when she knew that she couldn't really just break me that way. It turned into a bullying situation where when she would see me, her and some of her crew from the projects would like, she had that lady around. You remember on what was the show? Steve Harvey show, I think it was a lady around to be on there. She had that energy.
Okay.
You know, she wasn't built like that, but she definitely had that. And she was just a hood ratchet girl that was just determined to like, I mean, she would catch me in the hallway like, I'm gonna fuck you. I'm gonna, taunting me like her and her friends. You know, she started to get her friends in them because she could tell like, oh yeah, he's probably a virgin. I'm gonna get him. I'm gonna like so adamant about it like that. I had to start ducking her. You know, I had to start ducking her because I didn't want to deal with the harassment. Okay. Later that year, I went to a athletic game at Western High School. I have a sister who was a year younger than me. And she was like a popular athlete there. And some of her friends from the volleyball team saw me watching the basketball game and were like, hey, why don't you come on down and work out with us? We had the weight room or whatever. So at Western, it was like, you had the gymnasium and there was some steps that went, you go down the steps, there's a door, and then you could go down another set of steps and it'll take you into like the locker room / weight room area. So I went down, I was invited. I'm about 16 at this time. I was invited. I go down, we're working out or whatever. It started out that way. It was just me and these three. And, everything seemed cool. And then eventually, the conversation switches, it's giggles and this and that and the other. And then it's like, yo, all right, you know what you down here for. They was like, pull it out. And I'm like, really? Like, they like, yo, pull it out. I mean, start walking up, grabbing me. They were like, yo, like, look, you're going to do all three of us. And they were like, if you don't, we'll say that you tried to rape us.
Wow.
So this is a real life. So when I started seeing all the hashtag Me Too stuff coming out and how men who like Terry Crews who would speak on situations were being shamed, those were things that I carried with me for years that I never told anybody. I probably told one of my girlfriends or what, ever.
You never even shared it with your sisters?
I did share it with my younger sister who was a part, and she dealt with it in her own way, needless to say. But yeah, and it's something that they admitted happened, to her because she wanted to know, like, yo, like that. Think about how cruddy that is to be in a compromising situation where you're sexually assaulted, and because of the perceived idea of male strength, 3 women are able to threaten you with and plant it in your head that if you don't comply, we'll tell the police. And the police are sitting up at the top of the steps as they were at all athletic events. So I had to take a chance and gamble and run out of there. That was a situation when I say my heart beating like, because I couldn't believe that I was going through situations like that. And I'm not like, I don't think I'm special or anything, but I think the idea that a male won't tell, the idea that, which in many cases is true because of this whole shame element. A lot of people, what a lot of people would say, like I have said it to some of my male friends, and that they never said anything one way or the other, but on some old ignorant hood shit, people would probably be like, 3? You could have done all 3 the first time. I had never even seen a kitty before in my life live at that point. You know what I'm saying? Being honest. So because my whole life was church. My whole life was my craft. I wasn't thinking, I wasn't even mentally ready to take on a relationship. So those things are things. I have 2 sons now. Those are the kinds of things that I had to share with my sons at a at the point that they're aware at all of their bodies that, like, listen, don't you know,
And that would
things
be
can
the
happen.
last thing. That would be the last thing that you thought you would have had to protect your son from.
Absolutely. Because I would, even in my own mind, the perceived idea of male strength was that a woman wouldn't even dare try to do something like that with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I can even think of other instances, you know, in hindsight, where a female teacher probably hugged me. I'm talking about in my high school years,
Mm-hmm.
in little strange ways, because it's not like they're that much older than us, unless they, 50s, 60s. But you have school teachers that's old enough to be your
Early
sister
20s.
sometimes.
Yeah.
So I know of situations where things have happened in high school, sexual relationships between staff and students.
Yeah.
So
And a lot of the conversation, it when you hear about it happening, it's such a shock. Like the young lady I think she recently passed away at like 50, I believe, who got pregnant by the young, I think he was Hispanic young
she
man,
passed away. Oh,
and she
wow.
just recently passed away. And just bringing that story back up again, when we hear about these things, unless you have personally dealt with it, it's funny to you because you're like, man, like,
Mm-hmm.
and then when she came home from jail, they continued their relationship. Eventually, got
Mm-hmm.
married. Eventually, had another child, and
Mm-hmm.
that man's probably like 30 some years old now,
Mm-hmm.
and it's normal in his mind
Wow. Wow.
because this has been his life. People probably have said to him this was wrong, but how do you say that to the father of the child?
Mm-hmm.
You have to somehow normalize that behavior and move forward with it. And I'm not
Yes.
saying that he's probably crazy right now. He's probably, he's brainwashed
I'm
by
wondering
now.
what the condition of the children are.
How much
And
they know. But
how
they
much do
teenage.
they?
I think they probably teenagers now.
Wow.
It gotta be like teenagers by now, if not
Like, how do
already.
you raise, how would that be, being raised knowing that your mom was a pedophile
Yep.
and you
Yep.
were?
And he has 2 girls. He has 2 girls.
Mm,
So and that's weird because what if they sheltered them this whole time? And
right.
now they're like, well, like, Dad, why is mom's death such a big thing? Like, she wasn't a celebrity or anything. Why is it such a big thing?
Man. Woo.
And then you have to explain that to them. And now they're, especially the first child, like, how do you explain that to the first child? The second child, like, y'all were married at that point, but
Mm-hmm.
that first child, like,
Mm-hmm.
and that normalizes the behavior. So that's to her says, well, I can have sex right now. I can
Right.
do what my mother did or what my
Right.
father did.
Right.
And we have those situations where we know that young girl that had a drug dealer boyfriend that was way older than she was,
Mm-hmm.
and she was
Mm-hmm.
underage, and
Mm-hmm.
nobody said anything.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happened in the '80s. That was the '80s thing. It kind
Mm-hmm.
of trickled over to the '90s. Now
Mm-hmm.
she ain't even dating him. She dating his father now.
Mm.
And it's just I'm uncomfortable across the board, whether there's a
Mm-hmm.
male or female involved. But when there's a male child involved, and we are children until 18 legally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then I think I shared with you one of the interviews with a very ignorant black man who was saying, "Well, my child right now, he's the same age, and he know the difference."
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably because you've had to deal with this, and
Mm-hmm.
you showed your child what to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in Ronald Savage's situation, his mother slept with one of his friends as a teenager.
Mm,
So you're not gonna go to her for safety.
right.
You know, you can't go to these group of Zulu Nation individuals because
Hmm.
either they're participating in it or they just
Hmm.
staying mute.
And that's ridiculous that KRS One even parted his lips to say, well, when those things are going on, you deal with those things in house and da da da.
How?
Look, right, because first of all, that brother talked about death threats and everything. It's people who will kill, man. Why do you think Elijah Muhammad, right? Case in point,
Mm-hmm.
the fruit is there. Those children lived. That man definitely had relations with underage girl. Yes, he did a great thing with the Nation of Islam. Good. The
But
Catholic
was it
Church
really
does
great
great
though?
things,
Was it
but what
really
does
great?
that have to do with it?
But was that really great because you created this blanket of silence to bad behavior?
Mm,
So was that? I don't care if it ended up good if it wasn't started with the right principles. That means many of
right,
those people have the people who actually killed Malcolm
right,
were the same people
right,
protecting it.
right,
That's not healthy.
right. And that's what's scary. Zulu Nation is the same way. You'll get bodied. So all of that, why ain't they come forward and tell and this and that? Yeah, the internet has definitely changed the game
Yep.
because you can speak on it without having to wait for the because back in the day, as soon as you put the heat on the person, next thing you know, you get no warning like, yo, don't come outside. We catch you.
Yep.
Police came to so and so house. We waiting.
But that's
Snitches
my
get
fear with
stitches.
the internet though, because kind of the same thing is happening. Because now we're still doing everything in house. It's just public, but
Mm-hmm.
to me, that's still in house. We're not handling anything. There are tons of clips online where um, young people are confronting a family member that had molested them, and it's normally like at a family function or a funeral, and
Mm.
that person is like they got the phone pointed
Wow.
on, like angled at both of them, and the person you can tell the person like, oh, why are we talking about this right now? Like,
Right, right,
shut up, shut up, shut up.
right.
But the person is sharing their experience, and they're
Mm,
normally around other people that are instigating the violence part of it. And I say, if you
mm,
kill the person, if you beat the person up, even if you put the person in jail for 1,000,000 years, that doesn't help the person who went through it. That person
right.
is still reliving that moment. If that person doesn't find the strength, the knowledge, the guidance to get through that moment,
Mm-hmm.
they'll always be at that moment.
Mm.
Oh, and I say
Stagnation.
I when I say my aunt, I think it happened to her like preteen. But
Mm-hmm.
whenever she is around this man, like you can feel her becoming that little girl again. You can
Mm.
physically see it happening.
Mm.
And I've have felt so guarded around her in that moment, but nobody says anything, including myself, somebody who has gone through it. Still, and then I don't know what it is, and there's no fear in this person. This person puts no
Mm.
fear in us, but it's that confrontation. Like, what then happens? What do we then
Mm.
say? I remember
Mm.
starting a family group on Facebook, and we all were like posting whenever it was somebody's birthday or old pictures. And this person came in and started posting just off the wall stuff. And my reaction, because I started the group, was just to shut it down.
Mm.
Now I didn't take that, and I wish in that moment, because I was grown in that moment, to address the situation because it wasn't nothing but family in the group.
Mm.
To address the situation or try to make amends to it. But my first reaction, like most people, shut it down. Let's clear all this out.
Mm.
We ain't dealing with this.
Mm.
And we know it's other people, at least one other person in the family. But in us knowing this and us acknowledging this, it is uncomfortable. it's very much so uncomfortable to deal with. I understand that from the outside in and from the inside out. It's an
Mm,
uncomfortable situation.
mm-hmm,
But something has to now happen. We have to gain that strength to say something, to do something,
mm-hmm,
because a lot of these men who I know that I've come across, we dying,
mm,
dying. I'm luckily, I've had the arts, you've had the arts as a filter,
mm-hmm,
but that didn't take away the sting of some of this stuff happening.
mm-hmm,
It just
mm-hmm,
gave us a vehicle to be able to kind of guide us through life and deal with it where it did
mm-hmm,
not haunt us.
mm-hmm.
But what about the men who haven't tapped into that or who haven't
Right.
gotten that, or the men who are in that and it still didn't help them?
Mm-hmm,
I think you and I in some way wanted to get through those
mm-hmm,
experiences, but some
mm-hmm,
people don't know that they haven't even made that decision. It's just
mm-hmm,
I'm a eat, or I'm a over exercise, or I'm a just run through. Uh, I'm gonna run through how many people I can in the moment,
mm-hmm.
or whatever the outlets
Right.
are. I'm gonna have babies all in every area code, or
Right.
and not
Right.
be in any of their lives, and it's,
Yeah.
it's affecting our everyday lives. And
Mm-hmm,
again, like you said, we are attacking the outcome.
mm-hmm,
The absenteeism, the neglect, the abuse, the serial dating, the mental
mm-hmm,
break. We are attacking that. All we see is R. Kelly peeing on a young girl. We don't know
mm-hmm,
how he got to that point, but that's all we can see in our mind.
mm-hmm.
But we all saw that video and continued on life. That was like what, in the early 2000s, late 90s when we saw that,
Yeah, it
that
had to be
video.
like in the 2000s.
Yeah, and we
Yeah.
nothing up into him physically being put in jail. Nothing had changed for us.
Mm-hmm,
We still looked at him as the Pied Piper,
mm-hmm. And we let him go for 20 years plus being the Pied Piper.
and that's his career life. How
Yeah.
many people saw this behavior when he was a teenager?
Mm,
He didn't just start this because he had money. He was
mm,
able to do it because he had money and get away with it on the level in which he was doing it because he had
mm-hmm.
money. The money just created a barrier, a
Right.
buffer.
And
But
that's another
who
thing,
saw it?
buying silence, man. Like
Yeah.
they say money talks and bullshit walks.
Mhm.
You know, money clearly was a factor in some of the parents' decisions because the way some of the stuff comes together in that particular story is that mothers who clearly were R. Kelly fans brought their daughters around this man. Like fathers too. You know, it's
And
like, are we serious?
yeah,
Like, let's how what's going on with the if money? I saw a clip today. They were looking for a young girl that had went missing. Her mom sold her for $200 to settle a drug debt.
mm,
That little girl was sexually assaulted and murdered. And they showed the footage of the people actually leave. She was like 5 years old.
wow.
5 years old. So there are definitely some situations where unfit parents can profit from financial exchanges or other exchanges by letting someone take advantage of their child, and they've done it. You know,
It- It's
uh,
it's it's out of pocket because in my mind, just in you telling your story, I am picturing where you would have been if one of those young ladies would have yelled rape.
mm, mm, yeah,
Where everything would have been. and we unfortunately be out of time right now. So we're going to continue these conversations. So
Yeah.
please stay tuned, stay locked into the Artist Exchange Radio Show with me, Nate Couser, and with Mr. Curtis Gorham as we did I say your last name right?
Yeah, you
Okay.
that's fine. You say it like Gorham. But that's it's spelled that way. Go ahead. You good.
But I'm in my mind, I got to get these things out before I move on to do anything else. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm so appreciative for you for coming and joining me as another black man to be able to have these open and honest conversations. And it's
Mm-hmm.
going to get a little bit stickier as we move forward because there's some things that I know is on my mind and that's on Curtis's mind. So with that being said, please, if you watch this, please share it out. Please share it to anybody that you think would benefit from the conversation or the interview. And if you want to join us eventually, I think we'll start letting another person, a third party in. But we want to get some things established first in our report
Mm-hmm.
and before we begin to open it up because it's
Mm-hmm.
just, getting to know each other. So
Mm-hmm.
this has been the Artist Exchange Radio Show. Thank you, sir.
Thank
Appreciate you.
you. Thank you for having me.
And up next, we will have the cocktail social. So please stay tuned, stay locked in for that. This has been the Artist Exchange Radio Show only on BigSportsRadio.com.